Hello. My name is Mamadou. I will be discussing my paper three in this video. And the paper three focuses on software problems related to cyber warfare. I'll be discussing man in the middle attacks and specifically focusing on session hijacking. Now, with man in the middle, I'll start off with that. Man in the middle, basically, an hijacker or a hacker inserts themselves between a requesting computer and a server pretending to be one of the other parties in the session. That allows them to intercept information, data, in both directions, and basically allows the attacker or hacker to spy on both sides. So the attack happens when a communication between the two systems is intercepted by an outside party, which is the hacker or the attacker. This can happen with any form of online communication, so like emails, or even social media. With a man-in-the-middle attack, the hacker can spy on a private conversation or can target all of the information on the user's device. So it's not a good thing. The different types of man-in-the-middle attacks can be email hijacking, session hijacking, or Wi-Fi eavesdropping. I'm going to be focusing on session hijacking. An example of a man-in-the-middle attack is in 2015. It was a country in Europe. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But it was a country in Europe, and basically a cyber criminal group was able to steal £6 million by hacking the large companies in this country. And they were using the email accounts that they hacked to request money from the clients that they use to the account. So that was just an example, a brief example. Now I'm going to discuss session hijacking. So with session hijacking, the overview is with computers, there's a lot of back and forth transactions with the servers around the world, letting them know who the user is and requesting specific websites. The web servers should respond to the request by giving the user the information that they're asking for. And this happens when you're browsing or even logging in with a username or password. Now, with a session, the session between a user's computer and the server is given a unique session ID. The unique ID stays between the two parties and it should stay private. Once the attacker is able to obtain the session ID, the attacker then poses as the computer making the request. This allows the hacker to log in as an unsuspecting user and gain access to unauthorized information or data. They can be used to target the user, or it can be used to gain information like a username or password, so on and so forth. And basically, hackers can steal session IDs by engaging in a cross-site scripting attack to hijack session IDs. During the session hijacking, the hacker places him or herself in between the users and the computer's website server while there's an active session going on. Once the hacker is successfully hijacks, he or she has the capability to monitor everything that's happening on the user's account and even has the ability to kick the user out of the session and take control of it. Now, with session hijacking, the attacker can enter the server and access its information without having a registered account, which is really interesting. The hacker can also make modifications on the server, which will help him or her hack in the future, make it easier. Now, with computer sessions, you got to understand a little bit more about computer sessions. But with computer sessions, there's this thing called TCP / IP protocol, which is short for a transmission control protocol, internet protocol. And that's the technology that governs how websites and computers communicate with each other. Session hijacking is made possible because of the limitations in the protocol. So with session hijacking, it focuses on session ID and session sequence. The session ID is the name of the particular session. The user's computer and the website send information back and forth by using something called a data packet. And a brief example that I used in my paper for a data packet is when a website breaks down an image into 4 data packets and then sends it to the user's computer. The user's computer then puts the images back together in order to get the image. The sequence is the number assigned to each data packet, so the receiving device knows the order used to put the data back together, in brief. With hijackers, it is said that they usually target big websites and servers with many computers connected, typically because it's easier for the attacker to stay hidden and stay stealthy. It is said that like bank websites, online shops, and forums are like all big targets when it comes to session hijackings. There are a couple different types of session hijackings that I talked about in my paper. One is the two main types that I talked about were active and passive session attacks. And so with an active attack, the hacker stops the user's computer from communicating with the server and then replaces it within the session. And then after that, the hacker can do anything the user would be able to do. For example, if the hacker hijacked an email account, the hacker would be able to send emails, delete emails, copy emails, or so on and so forth, like he was the user. Then the next type of hijack was the passive session hijacking. And that's when the hacker quietly monitors the information or the data flowing across the network. And attackers usually use this one when they want to stay hidden. And then the next type of attack that I talked about was a TCP sequence prediction attack. And this is when the hijacker attempts to guess the sequence of numbers of data packets sent between the users and the server. The attacker then creates his own data packets, wraps them in a sequence number, and then finally sends them to the server. What the attacker is trying to do is he or she is attempting to make the website server think that he or she is the real computer. The hacker has to be careful though, because if the hacker sends the incorrect guess, the server will basically restart the connection. And then the last type of session hacking that I talked about is session side jacking. And with session side jacking, it takes advantage of an open, unencrypted communications channel to search for a session ID. Attackers typically target unsecured Wi-Fi connections. They will use sniffing devices that scans incoming and outgoing traffic, searching for session IDs. The websites that don't have SSL certificate are more exposed. So something that I learned was the best way to understand if a site has SSL is if when you look at the URL, if it has HTTPS, the S stands for, the S that comes at the end comes from the word secure. And basically that's just showed that your website is secure from what I read. As far as prevention, they focus on, when it comes to prevention, they focus more on like the big website client side, because all they recommend for the users is basically stay up to date with your antivirus, anti-malware software, and make sure it's always updated, make sure it's always on. For the client side, basically there's a certain technique that uses engines with which fingerprints all requests of a session. It also tracks like the IP address, session ID, and even the HTTP headers. The session has a certain amount of penalty points assigned to it, so every single time a change is made to the session, a penalty point gets added. And when it gets to a point, there's a certain limit. When it gets to a point to that limit, then the session ends if there has been too many changes that happen. So that is my paper on session hijacking and the man in the middle attacks. Thank you.